I think I'll go from the small local scale. My job is to look at the big scale and to ask the question, what does all this mean? Where is it all going? When Nicole, Coyote, and Kate first came to me and said they wanted to do a conference on transformative real estate development, I asked the same question to myself. I didn't ask it to them. Transforming what? Because as the dean mentioned in the beginning, transformation means going from something to something else. You're changing forms, okay, which is a fundamental change. And so as I was listening to all the speakers today, I was asking myself, what is the fundamental transformation that we're all talking about? Because clearly something is going on. The real estate industry in general is kind of in turmoil at this point in time. Virtually all of the traditional real estate products that we've built in the past, from retail to housing to offices, they're all being disrupted. All the old models are dying, and the question is what's going to happen in the future, and why is this happening? So basically, I would say that the transformation is really happening around how we create value in real estate and how do we measure that value and what, as Ernst said, our expectations are of this industry. And if I can put this in context, in the 19th century, our expectation of real estate was to build the industrial city, okay, the productive industrial city to make things. Now, if you think about it, in the 20th century, when us planners got on the scene, we wanted to throw all of that out because it was dirty and exploitative and brought all kinds of bad things into the city. And planners spent the century throwing production out of the city to the suburbs or to undesirable areas where we accumulated huge numbers of people to make mass production. Well, in the 21st century, we're seeing a return to productivity as a measure of value. Because in the 20th century, what happened was when we threw out all the production, we got a city focused on consumption. Okay, the public realm was defined by shopping, right? Shopping centers, this was what we did, with our lives. We consumed things. And it's kind of a dead-end street. It does lead to inequities. It does focus us basically on financial value and what goods it can buy. And now we have a new generation and technology and so forth, and it's enabling us to reconsider that and to once again think about a city that combines production with consumption. And Jesse's, wherever he is, his example is fantastic because he is developing around making things once again, not another cultural center in an industrial building, which you'll find all over China. So really, all of the people who spoke today spoke about ways of getting more for less resources. How do we get more out of what we invest? Because the 20th century city was incredibly inefficient and incredibly inequitable. It was based on hierarchies. It was based on segregation. Put this kind of person there, this kind of person there, industry here, schools here, and then we all take cars. That's very efficient to connect it all together. But if you think about the city as a productive city, you begin to ask the question, how do we produce more than we consume? Okay? How do we produce more clean air? How do we produce more energy, jobs, equity, culture? The 20th century consumed local culture. How do we do development that makes local culture, that makes more nature, for example, rather than consumes it? And it seems to me, that's the mindset, that's the expectation that we should have about real estate. And we're really moving this way, and that's why I'm so happy that we've had this colloquium today. We're moving this way in the Center for Real Estate. We're moving, as we call it, from an attitude that real estate is about developing projects to an attitude that it's about making cities. And when you think about real estate as making cities, you think about the context, you think about impacts on health, you think about diversity, equity, you think beyond the project and see yourself as part of a larger collective enterprise. And I think that's what we should be teaching students. And in the future, that's how value will be sourced. That's projects which can do that will be more valuable socially, of course, but also financially. So I think this was a fantastic panel. I'm so happy to see so many friends and faces from the past. And I suggest that you think around about what is happening to all the things that we used to develop and where they're going. Office into co-work, retail into who knows what, housing into co-living. All these things are changing and it's time for disruption. And I think we can have a really, really positive, and Nicole is right, this is the moment where we can transform our expectations. So thank you all. Thanks so much.
All right, we have about 15 minutes, so we'll just do about 10 minutes of general Q&A. If there's anyone who has any questions or comments, this is a good time to raise them. If you have a question for a panelist or who's still around, or a question for Dennis or for myself, please let us know.
I have a question for Dennis. I like the concept of moving production back into the city. It's fine. But how do you deal with the transportation that goes along with it?
The logistics. Well, it's part of the technology can provide us, I think, a way of dealing with this. It's only possible to move production back to the city because of it. I wonder where he's from. So the logistical problems will be solved, I think, basically through autonomous vehicles. In Amsterdam, we're doing a project that's putting autonomous boats back on all the canals to create a new logistical system for the system for the city, which is just reclaiming what was there 300 years ago. That's why the canals were built. So
there's so much pressure on transportation.
Yeah.
You look at Uber, for instance, it's adding so much traffic. All that. It's just, the concept sounds wonderful, but
it's happening.
It's happening.
Yeah. Lower Manhattan has 5,000 new production companies and startups there now. And they're not going to happen without problems, but I don't think we have a choice. I think all of this production is following the talent which is moving to the cities, because that's where innovation and creativity is happening.
Thank you.
For questions today. So one conversation I had with Gia when I was visiting Sweetwater Foundation that I thought was fascinating, I work in affordable housing in LIHTC, and the work I'm doing I feel does make great impact, and I was presenting some facts about what the area median income in Chicago is, and Gia mentioned to me that the average, like the 30% area median income was majority of the population that you're working with, and that because of the way we're looking at AMI as a whole versus at individual community levels, we're actually forgetting and we are creating these invisible communities. I'd love to hear about like how you're working with like policymakers who might not even be realizing the depth of the inequity that you're working with.
Trying to refresh the conversation. I think the conversation was just feeling like, and this is, I guess, a lot of what's talked about in the developments, even when they're happening today. There are a lot of people. It just still does not work, and that's really in the community. Those pictures I showed you, and in that community, in those spaces, all of these neighborhood development projects that are going on are completely irrelevant. There's one literally blocks from us. It was like a 7-figure, lots of TIF dollars, and artists in residence, affordable lofts, but they're starting at like $800-900. That's not realistic for someone that is making minimum wage at a part-time job, which is in reality what a lot of young people at best are doing, young adults in Chicago that are struggling. So there is not a space for them to go. There are not rentals for them to go to. Home ownership is but a dream that may never be realized. And a lot of, when we were talking about these numbers, I'm like, it's still affordable for whom? I don't know if that gets at what you were talking about, but I think that the distance between capital and community, and also this term community, is really generic. And it really takes folks being on the ground in a neighborhood. And even when we talk about, what are the parameters of a neighborhood and what are the realities of the people living in that neighborhood, because there's also diversity within these communities. There are homeowners in our community that have been there for a long time that are passing down the wealth, but there are also a lot of predatory landlords, slumlords that are, getting it. How you'd be surprised how hard it is for the members of our team to find rental apartments. And I'm always astonished at how much they're paying in the communities that they live. And I think that lack of understanding of what actually happens on the ground with people, I think there's a big reality difference between most of the time those who are doing development, who are at City Hall, or who are developers, and those who are actually working in communities, like, talk to teachers, working in schools, to get an understanding of what families are really dealing with.
John, do you just yell out?
I can yell out, yes, I'm good at yelling. So I'm in the Center for Real Estate, and my passion is kids in crisis. So what is starting to amaze me now is that I can start to see a connection between kids in crisis and real estate. When I go out to see your community, I see those wonderful kids running around. The little ones, I love the little ones. And the other ones that they're changing. Real estate, what you're doing in developing is changing people's lives. That's really the transformation to me, is real estate can change people's lives. It happens there, it happens to some of the other things that we're doing. I think of anyways, other people that are old like me, 20 years ago, these words weren't even in our vocabulary, as we see. The progress we've made and the connection between people and real estate to me is just a wonderful evolution. And people like you, Jer, and Emmanuel, and others that do that, make it, and in making cities and bringing production back, bringing people back. It's about people. It isn't about buildings. It's about people. What a great place to be able to be in that thing and leading that. So it's exciting to be able to see that people do it and be around the people who do it. So I'm grateful for that.
Can I just ask you a nuts and bolts question? Is your 501c3 owning the land that you're farming, or do you have another ownership model that you're using?
So we have, there's a whole sort of like map could iron it out, but it's a mixture right now of what we lease from the city of Chicago, and then we have ownership in other parcels. Equipment, there are, there's land that we occupy as well, because there's folks in the suburbs that have been holding on to parcels. We don't do anything with them for decades. We have speculation for the Olympics back in the day, and then also for the presidential library, which was maybe going to be the Obama presidential center was going to be in Jackson Park or Washington Park, or close to Washington Park. So there are just folks that just hold on to all these vacant parcels and are doing nothing with them, and none of the purpose there. But like the farm is the city owned, and other elements are city owned, but we do have ownership stake in some. And as we move forward, we intend to increase that.
First, thank you guys for organizing this. It's great. And as a Chicago native, Gia, thank you for what you're doing. And it's really cool. It reminds me of an organization called Hannah Farm here in Boston, which is out on one of the islands. And it's a summer camp for youth that don't have access to that kind of programming, where they teach kids how to farm. It's pretty cool. Something maybe I missed it that I hope was talked about, kind of an open question for the group is, as a good part of our population gets older and older, and people my age, like trying to help my parents out, how can real estate kind of transform their experience, but also the experience of the caretakers. How there aren't a lot of ranch houses that are accessible. They aren't always affordable. Like my parents are paying more for a senior assisted living in rent than I am here in Boston, and that's in Skokie, which like isn't prime property, so to speak. So kind of open question to the group.
I would say, yes, that was great. The next revolution in real estate is around health. Okay, that's the next revolution. We have had a kind of revolution around sustainability, but sustainability is a subset of the issue of health. And if you think about it from a market point of view, you have the millennials on one hand who are tremendously focused on health and experience and quality of life, the largest generation in history. And on the other end, you have the baby boomers who are all, like your parents, in a position of typically wanting to stay within their homes and neighborhoods and not allowed to consume a product that was offered in the 20th century and developed in the 20th century, which is assisted and independent living. So you have these powerful markets colliding, and we have the technology to measure the health benefits of development. So health is going to become how we can make more healthy communities, more healthy places to work, one of the central drivers of real estate. Very, very important. And how to keep, one of the central issues is how to keep people in their homes longer, because that's where they want to stay. It's the least expensive option.
I have a question for you. How do you deal, or how is that trend of moving away from ownership that millennials, they're not interested in owning, right? They're just interested in rent. How does that affect the transformative?
I think we have more flexibility in what we can do.
But doesn't that make people more like moving, because they're not owning, they're just easy?
I'm not sure that's actually the case.
I think as that was more the case for the millennials when they were a younger cohort, but you do now see the upper end of the millennials very interested as they marry and begin to establish families, purchasing if they can afford it.